About how do we use the forms, means how we can create the forms dynamically. So while working with forms, we discussed 2 points. First, I showed you what is the problem with the general way of React. Means we need lot of methods, we need lot of functions. Manually, we need to write so many events, then we have to validate, right? So for validation, we need manual approach so much. We used a library which has simplified the form. That means by using this library, what we done, by using this library, we created a form and we are using Formik library. If I show one library, you can explore other libraries by yourself. I will give a list of some libraries used in different applications. You can explore them. That means every library nobody need to teach you. Then you are not a developer at all. If every library somebody have to teach you and you have to learn, then you are not a developer. Because in real world design, we don't know which library they are going to implement. We are not sure. You cannot give a certification to one library that this is popular, this will be used. That is nothing, because it may be popular for you and your company, but not for others. In that case, everybody have their own libraries, third parties to use. So what is the first basic thing? We have to understand purpose of that library and we need to explore by ourselves. One library I'm showing, others you have to try. I will show you the other libraries which are used. You can explore them, you can try them. If any issue is there, you can come. We will see what is the problem, right? So, which library or third party we are dealing here is Formik, right? In this Formik, yesterday what we done, we created a form. In the Formik, we created a form and we collected the data from form and submit. So for that, yeah, that is the Formik library we used. And the Formik library have used only form initial values and form submit. Now today we will see how Formik can handle validation. Let's see Formik validation, how it can manage validation. Yesterday you saw, I showed you here and there some validation criteria. That means people, how they write functions, conditions and all and validate. Now in Formik, how the validation is managed. Let's see, here also different techniques are there. We will see all techniques, different important techniques which you can use. So in the Formik validation, yesterday's validation, when we done, we have to write on blur, on change. On blur, we verified whether value is entered or not. Similarly, on change, we verified value entered or not. But here, one advantage is it will reduce events. We can even reduce the functions also. I will show you. First, we will see basic validation. Then we will see more simple concept. How Formik can validate. There are two options are there. One, for actually Formik can handle validation using two techniques. One is validation function, another one is validation schema. Formik can handle validation in two ways. It can handle validation in two ways. We have a validation function and validation schema. First, we will see what is validation function. Validation function is nothing but we can write a validation function and we can validate everything manually. Custom validations. You may ask, like, if simplified options are there, then why we have to write lengthy? Simplified options are present, but why we need lengthy? Because the simplified options provided by them may not suit our requirement. In that case, we have to write our own validation, our own function. For example, if you see, means why they may not satisfy the requirements. Just example I will show you here. So here I am taking this page. Yeah. Now in this page, suppose I am validating some input type. We have email and we have a button. So submit. Now email is a default validation. That means in HTML, if you write input type email, it will have a default validation of email. So you entered some name and click on submit. Then it will verify and report saying that please include @ So it's good. It is verifying whether @ is present or not. Okay, I entered @ and GM. Is it a valid email? Still, it is not a valid email, but it can submit. It can submit. That means there is a validation schema which is internally designed and internally working, but that schema may not be suitable for us. We are not satisfied for our kind of requirements with that schema. Then you have to manually write. That means third party libraries will provide simple process, but if you are not satisfied with that what they give to you, then you have to customize, add manually. That is the point. So why you have to learn a manual approach? Because the predefined simplified library may not solve everything that you are looking for. Gaps will be there because they haven't designed for your requirements. They designed and given to you. When you are using for your requirements, some may not satisfy. Then we have to manually write. That is the reason, even there is a simplified approach, you have to learn the manual approach. How do we do that? Let's see. So here now I am creating another option here. Let's create validation here. So validation function and validation schema. What is validation function? First I will show you. Validation function is nothing but developer can write a function manually developer can write a function manually that that verifies the input values and returns an error object. Developer can write a function manually that verifies the input values and returns an error object. So error object can report can report all errors in form. Error object can report all errors in the form. Whatever errors are there in the form, the error object can report those errors. But this is manually verifying. So we have to manually write and verify all of them. Right? Let's do this and see. I will create another component from basic so that you can one more time see Formik concept. So I will add another component here in the components. So Formik validation. Okay. Let's add a new file, Formik validation.jsx. We are using Formik validation.jsx. So here we are writing export function. So that is Formik validation. Okay. Now it will return a simple container. Okay. So let's create here. Just I am writing from scratch again so that you can one more time see the font. Now we want a form with validation. So let's first design the fields, which already we know. So say register user and data list and data term username. And we have a text box. Input type is text. Okay. And yesterday we learned some basic rules that every form must be enclosed in a form container. Am I right? It must be enclosed in a form container, especially when you are submitting. And every form element must have a reference name compulsory. That is some username. Okay. Now, similarly, I will add some other field, suppose age, and input type is equal to text number, or say text. We will verify types also. Okay, and this have a name as age. Another term is some mobile and data definition. So input type is text. And here we have name. Name is what? Mobile. Another data term is city. And data definition, we have a select. And we have name as city. And we will keep some option. And this is having a value -1. Okay. This is select city. And we have another option. So this is having value. So some Delhi. Okay. So this is a simple combination we defined. Yeah. This is the option we have. Now we will keep a button and let's say submit. Okay. Now we will keep this Formik validation. And in the startup, we will define That is Formik validation we have. Now, first thing, we have to collect the values coming from this form and submit. So, what we have to do to collect the values and submit, we have to import, use Formik from Formik library that we installed yesterday. And we have to create a Formik reference constant. Formik is equal to use Formik. And Formik hook have some settings. In the settings, first initial values. Initial values indicates what are the values you are going to deal inside this form. So we are dealing with username, which is a string. We are dealing with age, which is number. We are dealing with a mobile, and which is string. We are dealing with a city, and that is also string. Right. Now, on submit, we have to collect the values and send somewhere to backend technology. So then what we have to do? We have to write another comma. We have on submit. On submit, it uses a function which will collect the values, and these values need to be submitted. Somewhere I will keep an alert. So JSON string 5 and collect all the values. This is where we are going to implement post to server APIs and all. Next level we will do. Okay, form is ready. It is designed with the elements. Now, how to bind this Formik value to the form elements? For that, we have to use on change. On change, Formik dot handle change. Formik dot handle change. We have to use handle change. That means Formik internally have a handle change, which is going to collect the value and store in initial values. That means it will collect the value entered in text box and it is going to store in this username. It is going to store in that username, right? Similarly, all. That means on change, copy, same on change for mobile, on change for age, and on change for city. So after that, after collecting the values, form on submit. On submit, it has to handle Formik. Formik dot handle submit. Handle submit will handle. That is the basic. Now you see we are collecting the data from the form. We are collecting the data from the form, age something or mobile something and city, and we click on submit, then it submits the data. So we just created a simple form which collects the values and it will submit. Okay. After that, now what should happen here is when user tries to submit, I want to validate. Now, how Formik can handle validation? There are two methods. If ready-made validation functions are written, it can use them. Or if you write any manual validation function, it can use them. Both facilities are there. That means a Formik can validate by custom validations or by using ready-made validation schemas. Ready-made validation schemas, we have to download other libraries again. I will show that. Initially, validation function we will see. Validation function is nothing but what developer have to do now. we have to create a function manually. Function, some validate user. This function should take the form values. Whatever values are present in the form, should take all form values. That means it is expecting a form collection. It is expecting a form collection. Form collection is nothing but it is a collection of key and value. Key is what? Key is field name and value is its value. That means here this form collection is, so form collection below I will give here. This is still there. We have to write all the validation there. Actually, this validate user function will collect the data coming from form. Remember, I am just using the yeah. So I am temporarily using this as this form collection. Actual, I'm just using a name that is my own name because that is a formal parameter. I given a name called form collection because traditionally it returns the form collection, and that form collection contains a key and a value, where key is the field name and value is its value. That means our key is field name. Field name is what? Username and whatever value you entered in it. It will be like John, it will be like age and whatever value you entered. That means now whatever data you entered in form, this data is passed into this collection. That means now form collection is an object which contains key and values. So it is an object. So generally it is an object with key and value collection, and keys are field names and values are their values. Now what we do here is we will create an errors object, and we will return this errors object. That means what validate user function is going to do, it is going to return errors. Means what is the return type of this function? Return type of that function is object. An error object it is returning. Errors is an object now. It is returning. Validate user is a function which is returning an errors object. Now here in this what we do is we write conditions. That means here we write the conditions like if we have form collection have field name like username is equal to some empty, then what should happen? We write the message here. That means now what should happen? Errors object will add a property called username. In that username property, it will put a message like username what required. Like this we do. That means now this errors object is dynamically added with a property called what? Username. In JavaScript, this is one specialty because JavaScript is not strongly typed. That is the reason sometimes very rarely people also say it as dynamically typed. Dynamically typed means dynamically you can configure a property and you can set some value into it. That means is this object having any property by name username? No. But automatically that property is added into this now. Or if you want restricted, that means only these properties must be there, then you can write those properties also. That means directly you can write here like what? Username empty, like this. Not necessary, because in JavaScript objects we can dynamically add the properties in JavaScript. But later when you deal with TypeScript, we can't do that, because TypeScript is strongly typed. Once you mention the type, it will handle only those types. Any additional type you are later adding, it will show error and it says that it is not in the context. But in JavaScript, you can dynamically add the properties. We can dynamically add. So this validate user is verifying and it is returning the errors. Now, how to report these errors? Now, what happens is we created a constant which is using Formik and which is using use Formik. In this use Formik, what happens? We used one what? Initial values. Initial values we have used. After that, we can have validate function. Validate. Validate uses a function name, and the function name is nothing but the function name is, what is the function name we given for validation? Validate user. So that means validate user is the function name. Now what happens is, and another what we are having usually on submit, it is having some function which is submitting the data. Now the point is, before it submits, it will use this function. Before it submits, it will use the function. It is internally designed like that. Yesterday what we done, we called the function every time, like on blur validate user, on focus validate user, on key up validate user. But here it will automatically call every time. That means now you see this validate is using this function. And observe now, this function is having all the errors. What that function is returning? This function is returning errors object. Am I right? It is returning errors object. That means now Formik can access this error object. Formik can access that error object. In that error object, what fields are present? It is having like username. It is having like age. All these properties are there. That means now Formik reference can access this errors object. That means now how you can report the error? You can report the error like that. Formik dot, we can use errors dot and field name. What is it? User. That means in that username field, which error is stored, that error it can display. That means we created a validation function. We are attaching that function to Formik. Formik is using that function before submit. It is collecting all the errors from the form and it is returning as an error object. And the validation errors returned by Formik is captured by Formik.errors property. Formik have an errors property which can access all the errors. All the errors. So, and you can report the errors. You can report the errors like Formik dot errors, errors dot what age. We can define like this. That's the basic how we can manage it. These are important for working with the Formik. So this process we have to follow, and this also looks little lengthy, complex. Of course, because everything again we have to write. That means, is username entered or not? Is age a number or not? Manually you have to verify. You have to manually write logic and again verify for that. That means even validation function is provided by Formik, the validation criteria you have to write. You have to write the validation criteria. That means they are providing validation function. They are providing the function, but criteria we have to design. That means now let's see here what to do. So above, I am creating a function now, and the function is validate user. It is expecting a form collection. It is expecting a form collection, and it will have an errors object, and it will return that errors object. It is going to return the errors object. Now, what that errors should be, that we decide. So we will collect if form collection dot username is equal to empty. If it is not having a value, then errors dot username, we have to keep this as we are assigning some value into it. That is nothing but username required. Okay, that is fine. Otherwise, else, suppose I am adding one more condition. If form collection dot username dot length is less than 4, you can use any conditions that you want. If it is less than 4, then errors dot username, it should return as name to short. So, and say min 4 characters. Like this, I am defining. That means you can add whatever logic you want for that. You can configure anything for that. Okay, this is for whom? This is for username. Okay, next, another condition. If form collection dot age, and here is nan, it is nan, then now errors object will use another property called age. In that we will define, and here also if age is not entered, then what you do, you can write a condition for that. That means suppose here what it should happen, it should say age must be a number. Okay, then we are defining like if form collection dot age is equal to empty, that means it is also not entered, then errors dot age is equal to, so age required, this message also should come. If it is not empty and it will verify is nan, it will display age is number. That means you are displaying that option here. And if here we have other conditions here, if the condition is satisfied, that means else. So errors dot username is empty. That means we don't put any message. Here also, if age is not is a number and it is mentioned, then errors dot what age, we will keep it as what empty. Now similarly, suppose I want to verify mobile, and mobile should have a pattern. It should start with some plus 9, 1 and 10 digits. Then if form collection dot mobile dot match is a string function which is used to verify the value with a regular expression. If it is matching with regular expression, and how regular expressions are written? In JavaScript, regular expressions are written in JavaScript in double slash. In JavaScript, regular expression is written in a double slash plus 91 and slash d and 10 digit number. You know how to write various validations. Huh? If it is matching with this, then errors dot mobile, it should be empty because it is matching. If it is not matching, then errors dot mobile should be invalid mobile. So plus 91, suppose invalid mobile plus 91 and 10 digits like this. I'm just keeping it clear. The message I'm displaying there. And another point is, if it is not entered mobile also required, then I will keep another condition. Form collection dot mobile is empty. If it is empty, then errors dot, so errors dot mobile is equal to, so mobile required, name required, mobile required, otherwise do this. If it is entered, then verify. Every consequence we have to write, right? That means for every concept there will be hundreds of test cases. Every case you have to write. So we cannot simply come with a complaint that this is not working. Why it will work? You have to write. If you say it is not working, have you written anything for that to work? Otherwise, how it will work? That means we have to write every case, and then that case will be verified, right? Okay, one more is there. What is it? Another option is, if form collection, so form collection dot city is equal to -1. If it is -1, so errors dot city is equal to, so uh, please select your city. That's the message we have to give. Else what we will do is errors dot city, we will keep it empty. Okay, this is all the validation. Now once you write these validations, and remember all these errors are written by this errors object, and finally see the errors object contains username, age, mobile and city. Means you added the properties dynamically. You can add, you can configure the properties, or you can dynamically add the properties according to the form. Okay, now what should happen? The validation function is ready. This validation function must be used by our Formik. That means the Formik have to use here, Formik have to use initial values. Validate. Validate refers to a function which will validate the values. That means function. What is that function? Validate user. That is the function it should use. That's the function it should use. That is what it have to use. That means, do you know what happens now? Actually, these values are passed into that function. The initial values are passed into that function. That is what happening actual. Suppose you see here, when the initial values are passed into that function, the function is collecting those values here. The function is collecting those values. In those, actually these are what? Initial values. Am I right? We are treating them as form values. And in that, username, age, everything will be there. Okay. That means now our Formik is using validation function. Then that means this validate is returning errors. You see what it is doing? It is going to return a promise. It is having a promise called errors, Formik errors. That means it is going to return all these errors. That means Formik is having an errors object which will collect all these errors. So what we have to do, just display them where you want. I want to display here. That means data definition. Here we want to display class text danger. And here we have to access Formik dot errors. There is an errors object. Now see, this errors object have the fields we have. That means it is having username. Okay. Now similarly, I will copy this definition. I will use for age. This is errors dot what age. And for mobile, I am using errors dot mobile. That means mobile related. And for city, and here errors dot what city. Those relative error messages are displayed. Now let's run this and see now how it is managing. I will refresh. This is empty. And I click on submit. Then it is showing those messages. That means name required, mobile required, and other. This is not there because we are verifying that on change. On change means when user selects, it will do that, right? Now here, I entered some city, it's okay. Otherwise, it will show that select your city. Okay, now I click here and I am typing some name. I'm typing some name and you see it is name too short because we return a condition also. And I return, so the condition satisfied, that's okay. If not satisfied, then it will show the message. And minimum length is also not satisfied, then it says name required. And you entered the name, then it is okay. Age, you entered some string, age must be number. And age, I entered this, it will find. Mobile, and you entered some mobile, some 98765432110. It is invalid mobile. I will put as what? +91, then it is satisfied. That means regular expression is also fine. And now you select a city, then it will be hidden. And important here is I am selecting a city. I am trying to click submit. It's not submitting. That's very good. The form is not submitted until or unless all the data is valid. That's good. It's not submitting the form. And once it is all clear and submit, it should submit the form. And see now, still the value is not submitted because actually, whenever the value is defined here, validate user, two criteria are there. I will explain in the next scenario. Suppose we are submitting and validating like this. I am defining. That means we are submitting and validating. Conditions I am defining like this. Now you see here, it is validating all of them. I entered some name and I entered some age. I entered some +91 and some values I entered. I selected some city and I clicked on submit. Then it should fire up that and display. And on submit, why it is not firing up? Because this is still not completed. Why it is not completed? Because there is another property that decides if form valid, then where to submit. Form invalid, where to define. That means what we can do is Formik provides another object which can collect the summary of all errors and it can show the summary. We can enable that also. That we will see in next level. We will see that. If we can do that, then on submit, it can submit the values and it can handle that. That means when everything is valid, then what should happen? It should able to submit the values. For that, we need a criteria, condition we need to define. What is the condition or criteria to define? See here. So you will see that later how to implement that and use it here. Now you see the option here. And this is the condition here. Yeah. And we will validate this user. Always validate here first. After that, you can submit. Okay. Now, what is the another condition? Yesterday we saw that this button also should have a what? Type as submit. Now, when you give the type submit, When you click on submit, all the errors are coming. You are entering the name and defining the values, entering some mobile. Okay, some mobile. I think it should start with what plus 91, then it is fine. Okay, 10 digits. And I selected the city and click on submit. You see, there is no submission of the form. So here we need to write the condition. That means if form state is valid, then where to submit. If form state is invalid, where to submit. There is a validation state also. That validation state we have to configure. So by using some other properties, Formik have some other options also. Formik is having some other options also. What is it? You see, validation on change, validation on mount, validation schemas. By implementing those other functions, we can submit the value. Submitting we will do, because anyhow submitting we will do into the database. There I will show you how we submit into the API. Errors, not errors, how do we manage them? So initially we are not worried about submitting of values, we are just verifying errors. That means, is the validation error satisfied or not? How to validate? But this is still not satisfying. Why still not means errors are okay, you are writing the errors, validations are displayed, everything fine. But what is the issue here? Observe carefully, one more point is that here you click inside, username, and you click outside the username, means blur. On blur also it should verify. Yesterday we done that. Then what you can do is here, you can write here another option, that is on blur. On blur, Formik, we have to give handle blur. That means Formik can handle change and Formik can handle blur. So on blur, what happens now is when user clicks inside and I click outside, then it should verify. But see, it is verifying all. But it should verify only this. That is what we have to write the other conditions. Now we will write the other conditions, then we can manage this problem also. That is why level by level we are moving towards the solution finally. Right? That means the problem is it is unable to submit. Another problem is it is unable to verify only that field. It is verifying all the fields. For that, again, we have to write a logic. And to avoid that, there is another technique now. That means next level, it will reduce this problem. It will handle these issues. Let's see what is that. That means now, what is the problem in this? I will copy up to this example. I will copy this example here. So Formik validation.jsx. Okay. What is the concept not still satisfying is we have to write the validations. We have to verify some methods manually. What are those methods we are verifying? We are verifying the methods called what? On blur, on change. We are doing that, right? Now see here, another concept is here I am not writing the events. On blur, on change, events we are not writing. Then the point is, if you don't write, how it will verify? On change, on blur, if you don't write that, so how it is going to verify? See, in this now, I am clicking on submit. It is still verifying that information. Why it is verifying that information? Because that is just error message. That is only the error message it is showing. I entered something, it's not hidden. Because on submit, it is capturing all the errors and it is displaying the errors. But now on change, it is not verifying because I removed change. On blur, it is not verifying because I removed blur. Here, age I entered, some age I am entering, it will verify because on change is still there. That means for every element, we have to write the events like on change, on blur, what is the functionality you want to manage. But for this also, they given a solution. The solution is here, what you can do is we can use a dynamic binding. That means in the element, we can do a dynamic binding and we can use a spread syntax. Spread syntax, that means dot, 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 and we can access the formic. Formic. That means what does this refers to? Formic, it refers to spread syntax. Already we know REST parameter spread syntax, right? And that means what does dot 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 means? Multiple values you can access by using one reference. All the attributes of a function, all the arguments of a function, we can access just by one reference. I already showed you REST, another one spread, right? Now here, Formik is having get field properties. Which field properties you want to get? The field name. Field name is what? Username. That means we are binding this to this. Now, is there any on change? No. Is there any on blur? No. That means we are not having any on change or on blur. And you see now here, I am defining like this. And I click on submit. When I click on submit, username is verified. I am entering the username. It's working. That's very good. This looks little more simple. That means we don't need to write any events now. Formik have another concept. Formik have another concept. And observe here now. So I refresh. I click inside the text box and click outside. It is verifying. That means it is using blur and it is using on change. But this time we are not binding any event. Remember, you need to remove all the previous from your brain. And if you think only this, that means it will be simple now. And in further stage, what we learn, it will be more simple now. And you will use only that regularly. Then why to learn so many consequences? Because if that is not possible, what is alternative? We have to check for alternative. If that is not satisfying, then what is alternative? How to write? You have to know that. That's the reason we are learning all this. That means you may previously say that, then why you previously told us on change and on blur? Directly you can write this. But when I directly write this and I don't want it to verify on blur, how? If I directly use get field properties, it is using two events. What are those events? On change, on blur. I don't want it to verify on blur. Then how? Then you cannot use this. Then what you have to do manually, you have to write on change. On change. That means if you want all, then better do this. This is more simplified. So what is the next simple technique? Next simple technique is you can use Formik method. You can use Formik method get field props. So which can access all the properties and methods of a field and configure dynamically. Actually, it uses a spread syntax. It uses a spread syntax. That means you have to just use. So in the input type is text. What you have to do is, so dynamic dot dot dot, what it is? Formik dot get field props. Which field? Field name. Field name is what? Username. That's it. You can do like this. That means now what it is going to do, it will have a name. Name is what? Username, like this. Now what it is going to do is, this is going to handle, that means dot 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 Formik dot get field props is going to manage on change, it is going to manage on blur, it is going to manage actually on key up like things, but actually it is only two, on change and on blur, and it is also verified on submit. That means on submit of form it will verify, on change it will verify, on blur it is going to verify. So, but however, submit is not for element, submit is for form, right? So this is basic how we have to manage. That this looks more simplified now when compared to previous. But what is problem again here is, if I don't want to verify on blur, then this is not good because it is verifying on blur. Suppose I don't want to verify on change, I want to verify only on blur. That means after he finished everything, then verify. Then we don't prefer writing on change. We prefer using what? On blur. These are all the points. That's the reason if you know this, that it looks simple, right? For every concept, I can do the same now. Let's see here. We will go and we will change. That means I will copy this and I have to remove on change and put field properties. And which field properties? Age. And here also remove this on change. On change, which field properties? Yeah, which field properties? We have to use mobile. And on change, which field properties here? So this is related to what? City. City. That's what we are defining. Now this time events are not configured. They are not defined and configured. And you see now on click, it is verifying. And you see the options now. I am entering, it is checking that. I'm entering, it is verifying. I'm entering that, it is going to use it. 987654321. Okay, now that is select city, and it is going to verify when you are selecting. So select city and it is going to manage. And I click on submit. We will see that how we can submit. Next, we will do that. Now this looks better. Okay, better where? Better in the UI, not in the logic. Logic is still same. That means all validation functions, is it empty, is length 0, all these are same. That means it is not reducing the effort of logic, it is reducing the effort of UI. User interface is more clean, more simple, and it is everything working, right? Now we will make the logic also simple. Okay, let's copy this. Again, I will give this example with field properties. That means Formik validation dot JSX. Okay. Now the concept is, how do I reduce this logic issue also? That means how I can reduce these functions. So much validation functions we have to write. Without writing these functions, we can manage. Without writing these functions, we can manage. We can verify, is it a string, is it a number, or you can handle that. Actually, for that, what happens here is, so Formik provides support for validation schema, which is a predefined validation library, called yup. There is a library called yup. By installing this yup library, then you can manage. By installing this yup library, you can manage. That means if you install this yup library, right, what will happen? It will provide ready-made validation schema. So how we have to install this? That means npm install what? Yup, and save. After that, actually yup is going to provide ready-made validation so many. That means generally this yup provides, so yup provides validation validation library validation library with a set of predefined functions, with a set of predefined functions. That means this yup provides predefined functions like you have. So we have yup dot required. We have like yup dot, so yup dot min length. We have like yup dot max length, right? So you have like yup dot number. Is it a number or not? It provides like yup dot string. Is it a string or not? It provides yup dot matches. Is it a regular expression matching or not? These are all ready-made validation schema functions. Now what is the advantage of this? You don't need to write anything logically. If I want to verify is the field required or not, previously what we have to do, length 0, then it is empty, or double quote empty string, then it is empty. But now just put required, it will verify. Now so many schemas are present. What you have to do is you can import any specific function or all functions. So from yup, you can do that. That means what you can do is you can write import. So we can write import asterisk as yup from yup. This is the syntax actually. We can do like this. Asterisk as yup from yup means what? It is going to import all functions. Asterisk means all. If you want, you can import any specific function like import required, right? You can define like this. So that means you can say import required, import min length, am I right? Min length from what? Yep. Like this you can define. You can import any specific you want, or you can import all. If you import all, these all are accessed as a reference of what? Yep. That is the alias name. By using that alias name, we access all the reference. That means in JavaScript libraries, whenever you are importing all functions, then you can refer as and alias name. That alias name is going to access all those functions. That means all the functions are accessed by using this alias name. Alias name dot min length dot max length. You can access all of them. So that means now, and important, all yup functions are defined in yup object. So yup object, this yup object will provide all those functions. All the functions are defined in this app object. Through this app object, you can access all of them. So if you are not writing a function, we are using predefined functions, then we have to apply that by using validation schema. We have to apply that validation schema. So what is the note? If you are using predefined validation functions, functions, then you have to configure using validation schema. You have to configure using validation schema. You have to configure using validation schema. That means what you have to do. So we have a constant. What it is? Formik. Formik is an use Formik. Use Formik is having values. It is having values. And what are the values? What are the values is nothing but here. These values, so will have initial values. Initial values is an object, and it is having what else? It is having this time validation schema. Validation schema. This validation schema is going to use this yup library. Yup can access an object. This yup object will have all the yup methods. It have all the yup methods. That means, what is it? Username, right? What is that username type? Yup dot required. And what is the message if it is not entered? Name required. That is the message. And what about min length? We just use min length. Min length is how much? Min length is suppose 4. What is the error message? Put the message here. That's it. That means you can simply put the validation like this. If it is age, what we do? Yup dot. F dot what type it is? Number. And we will say age must be what? Number. That is how. If it is also required, then I add required also. And put the message you want. Age required. That's it. Means you don't need to write any logic. If it is this, error object is this. That means now we can remove all the error functions that you written, and you can just use validation schema. Now, what is the problem in this? Can I use this required for a drop down? You can't. Because in drop down, every option is value. That means, can you use required for checkbox or radio buttons? How you can use? You cannot. Because radios are verified not by using value, they are verified by using checked. Then how? Whatever possible, do with schema. Whatever not possible, do with validation function. You have to write a validation function. We have to use both combinations. But if it is satisfying enough, this is more enough, right? See, now I will write this schema now. Let's go. First, we have to install a library. Na? What is the library? npm install yup and save. That's the yup library we are defining. Okay, then once yup is installed successfully, now let's go. Here we have to import. Why this form came? This is not required. Okay. Now here we are importing. What is import? So import asterisk as yup from which library? So from which library? Yup library. You have to define. A spelling. Okay. From the yup library, we have to import everything. So once you import, now see what I am doing. This is validate user function. I am deleting this function where you have lot of logic written. Delete all this function. There is no validation function. There is no validation function. We are not writing any validation function. No validation function. Okay. That means now this time it is not validate user. It is not validate user. It is what? It is not validate user. It is what? Validate validate schema. So validation schema. Validation schema is not using a function, it is using an yup dot object. This yup object will have all the schema configured here. What is that yup object schema? First, what it is? User name. For that, what is the restriction here? Yup have to treat it as a string. Means data type. You can even restrict the data type. And after that, it will have required. And what should be the message if required is not satisfying? You put the message, what it is? Name required. If you ask, what happens if I don't give a message? It have some message. It have inbuilt some message. It will show it. That means if you are not typing a message, it will have some message. Those functions are designed with predefined messages. It will have some message. It will show. Right? That means now another one, what it is? Min length. So minimum is characters. 4. And what is the error message? So name too short. That is the message we are giving here. Now similarly, next one. Next one is what? Age. Okay, what about age? Yup dot what? It is what type? Number. I am not giving any message for that number. Let's see what will happen. And this is also required. That means age what? Required. Okay, next what? So we have mobile. Okay, mobile yup dot required. It is also a what type? String. And it is also what? Required. That is what mobile required. And what else? Mobile have matches. Matches with a regular expression. /+91/D and 10. Like this we define. And comma, a message. Message is what? Invalid mobile. Or put everything whatever you want. Now what about city? You can't write. There is nothing for that. Why? Because city is a drop down. And drop down, on change of drop down, we have to collect value from an option. And how it knows that first option is not a value? Because every option is option. How it knows that first one is not city? You cannot have, you cannot pass the number here, string here, collect that, because it is ready-made functions. No, you cannot do that. Then what we have to do again, we have to manage that by using a validation function. Suppose a radio button or checkbox, you have to verify is it checked or not. Again, same point. That means you have to pass the function dot checked, then say okay. Not checked, say not okay. That's again same. But here this is okay. And observe carefully now. I am not doing any change in my design. I am following the same design, right? And this time you see here, I refresh this and I click on submit. It is showing the same. Age is not showing because age is already having 0 as number. It is already having 0 as number. That means now you see here, I entered some name that is same. Then if I told you first this, then you will feel like it's very simple only. And there is more simple. There is next level now. In next level, it is more simple now. That means even these also no need to write. That means your UI will be more simplified. That means more shorter. User interface will be very simple, very clean, lightweight. We can make it very simple. For that, we have components. That means Formik is providing ready-made components. Those components can easily manage the validations, right? But now see here, I'm entering some age. You see, we haven't given a message. Then it got a message by itself. And what is the message? Says age must be a number type, but the value is not a number. To avoid this message and put our own message, comma, the message. right? And here I'm adding some number, then it is okay. Mobile required, so 987654321 and it is like what, plus 91, that's fine. But you don't have for a drop down or a text box, then again one function you write, attach validation also. You have to manually approach towards that. And see here, suppose so age or name is not entered, we are unable to submit. And same, when we entered the details and click on submit, it is submitting now. Previously it was having a problem, but now it is solved. That means the schemas are going to verify. If you have to manually verify, you have to write a logic for that. That means collect all the form data, verify is all valid. If all valid, submit, otherwise no. That's risky. We don't even prefer that, and we don't even want to tell to anybody that write like this, right? That means that's not at all preferable. In any real world situation, we don't write that, right? That means that is the point. So that means when you know these options, then we can easily handle. If any problem is there, submit, it is not submitting. And everything is solved now. Now it is submitting the data. So that is what the advantage of this, right? This is basically done by using the concept. What is this? This time we are using what? Validation schema. Validation schema. Okay, you reduced the logical concept. What about UI? UI looks very complicated. That means user interface looks too much complex, like all these dot Formik field properties and all. It looks very complicated. We can make it more simple. We can make it more simple. That means this user interface can be more simple, and we can design in a more simple way. And for that, actually, what happens is, so to this example also I will give now. That's an example, Formik validation. So .jsx, and here I will give schema. This is example for schema, right? Yep, schema. Let me copy this. And here we are using validation schemas. And this time the schema has ready-made functions. We just use those ready-made functions. And what more simplified? More simplified is nothing but you don't need to use all this. Actually, what is the more simplified concept is here. One more option is, so Formik provides predefined components which can handle the form elements and validations. That means now the point is, so you don't need to use HTML elements, HTML input or HTML form, we don't use. That means Formik components include, we have Formik, so we form, we have field, we have error messages. These are the components. And if you use these components, then it will be more simplified. If you use these components, it will be more simplified. That means, but how to use these components, we will see, right? For example, here what we have to do now, remember, if anybody showed you in any interview, form and form, both are not same. Because right side, this belongs to a component. It is a component. It's not a HTML form. If they are writing an uppercase F, that is not a HTML form. That is their own form component. They are using their own form component. By using that component, they can easily manage the forms. Actually, now what this Formik can do? That means what this Formik can do is it can design a form with fields and error messages so that validation will be more simplified. The concept is more simplified. For example, just point here. See, actually, this Formik is having, the Formik is a container. This is a container. Actually, this Formik is having, it's a very big concept. Yeah. This Formik is having initial values. It is having initial values. Initial values. It is having on submit, and it is having what else? Validation, and it is having validation schema. That means all this it can have, and inside the Formik there will be a form. Inside the Formik there will be a form, and inside the form there will be a field. The field type will be text. It becomes a text box, and field name, it will be for which one? User name. Like this we can design, and it can have a error message for which field? User name. That's how we define. This is enough. No handle change, no handle blur, nothing. That is enough. That means even you don't need to write get field properties. That means your UI is very clean. Your user interface is very clean. That is enough. That means now it can handle the validation easily. Right? So now I will show here. See, let's see here. Okay, I need to clean up this form. This form is not there anymore. Okay, that is the cleanup. But important validation schema we written above, right? This also we will see how it manages now. Now for that, what we have to do is you have to import. So we have to import Formik. We have to import Formik. We have to import form. So we have to import that form, and we have to import field, and we have to import what? Error message. Formik is having all these components. Now see what the design is. Here we are creating Formik. This is the component. In this Formik component, we have a form. This is not HTML form. This is not HTML form. This is a general Formik component form. And this Formik will have some properties. For clarity, I am keeping in next line, but because it is lengthy, right? So here, so what it will have? Initial values. Initial values. It is an object. It will contain all these initial values. Let's paste these initial values. So these are the initial values. I am removing from there, and I am keeping those initial values here. Okay, next what? Next what? It is having validation schema. Validation schema. What is that validation schema? Let's copy that validation schema. What it is? Yup object. And cut this. And we are using that validation schema here. That means it is using, okay, we are using that validation schema there. I will copy that here. The validation schema is pasted here. That is the validation schema we are configuring. That means we have to define here type of yup is not there. Actually, you are using another one here. Extra parenthesis not, right? That is yup object here. Okay, next what? Next what? On submit na? That means we have to use on submit. On submit what? So on submit, this is what the action it has to do. That means on submit, it is handling this interaction. That's okay, right? Now, what is the point here is now delete this. That means no more Formik. We are deleting that. There is no more Formik. That means there is no Formik declaration and all. Now we have a Formik. Inside the Formik directly we are having all this. What is it? Formik have initial values, Formik have validation schema, and Formik have submit. And in this Formik, now we have to give a data list, data term. Here I will give user name. Okay, data definition here. I want a field, a field. And what this field should refer to? Field name. Field name will be what? User name. And field type. What is the field type? Field type is what? Text. Field type is text. It should work for username and it is text. And below this, we have a data definition. And this is what? Error message. Error message name. Name is for whom? Username. That is the error message. That means we have the field username and error message. Now I am defining here another one. What is it? Another data term. What is it? Age. And data definition. And here it is field. So, and what is the field? Field name is what? Age. And field type. Type is what? Some text. Text or number or anything. Another data term. So this is what? Mobile. Okay, they need an error message. And here what it is? Error message. Error message for whom? For name. What is the name? Age. For age, this error message. Okay, now here we are using mobile. Mobile is having data definition. This is what? Field. And field name is equal to what? Mobile. And type is what? Text. And here we have another data definition. This is an error message. Error message for name. For which field? This is mobile. Mobile field. This is the UI for that. And the form is having a button. And the button is a submit. So suppose the type is what? Submit. Submit for the button. And actually the form that we designed is this now. And when I click on submit, it will verify everything. And I am typing here. That means the same validation it is using. Colors and all we can define same validation it is doing. Suppose age, it is must be a number. I haven't given color. You apply the color for data definition. That means it is a number. That's fine. It looks more simple. On submit, it should submit the data. It is submitting the data. Now, how to design the fields like suppose city, data term is city. Actually, if you have to design such things, then we need a field, and this field will have a field as we have to use select. And in this, again, we need to define as what? Option. Option, say select city or something. And we have an option that is what? Delhi something. Like this, we define that. That is the option we are having there. And this field should have, so a name. Name is for which one? City. That means it is going to select the city and display. I click on submit, it is validating. And I am entering the details. Let's keep this also here. I think you can keep the error messages and all. Class name is what? Not for this. Error message. So class name is text danger. So that means it will be red. So everything is same. Right? That means you are collecting the data and you are entering the details. 919876543211. Okay. And select a city here and click on submit. It is going to submit all the data. And this looks more simple. That is Formik. This is what, if anybody shows directly to you in React, then you will feel like a React is very simple now, right? We don't need to write much. But how you will manage if you have to handle anything which is not inbuilt available? Obviously it will not be available. So many radios, checkboxes, we cannot simply validate by using these. They given, but they are not still satisfying. Then we have to check for another third parties, or we have to use some other. So this is by using the components how we can validate. This is example of same. What is it? Formik validation dot what? JSX, right? Once you know this, you can explore some other third party libraries. Here's some more is there. Means in related to validation, some more points are there that we'll see tomorrow. We'll have session tomorrow because Monday we are having holiday. Monday on Ganesh Chaturthi, that is holiday, declared holiday, right? So we will have session tomorrow because Monday we will not have session. Okay, right? Tomorrow we'll continue.